Greetings and welcome to the broadcast. I'm your host. This is the Kandahar Giant. If we were to Google this, for instance, we would come up right off the bat, either Google or start page, a bunch of articles chronologically of special forces guys getting killed in Kandahar area of Afghanistan. The story goes that the giant killed some of them. They killed the giant. It was spirited out on a plane, something like this. If we do a YouTube search, not Google, but this YouTube search, I'll do a couple pages here for us. Same thing. What makes this interesting? This story, it's been out there for 10, 12 years. Now it's gotten some legs and money's being spent on it. Let's go ahead and go over to Kandahar in Afghanistan. Take a look around. Here's their university in the back, Kandahar University. In the background is mountains similar to where the so-called giant was killed. If we look around the town itself, we're going to see a lot of sidewalks or just dirt fields, and some nice-looking buildings. There'll be, of course, the feel-good photo op where there'll be a tall basketball guy. This guy's not a giant, and a little militarism. Now, the Canadians, bless their heart, this is why they call them infidels. This is just like putting a swastika on their soil by putting this maple leaf and risking lives to do it. It just shows how befuddled and twisted the war effort is over there. But what we're interested in is this Kandahar Giant. I'm going to have somebody else come by and give a blurb on this thing. Then I'm going to come back, we're going to do some analysis, and you and I are going to get to the bottom of this thing and do a little intelligence gathering. Of course, now I don't know, I'm not taking, this could be another Roswell, New Mexico thing where there's a little something, a little fire, and a little smoke. You're going to get guys like this coming out of the woodwork who see a giant, of course, in every single thing. If we take a look at the Bible, and I like to do that as a baseline, 19 times the word giants listed. If we add an S onto it right here, giants plural, giants are mentioned 11 times. Giants are involved in a lot of stuff in the Bible. Of course, the most famous one here is they come down and have relations with women, have children by women, and like that there. And other things, there, Moses had to fight the giants. In addition to David and Goliath, Moses took them on and did quite a job on them. There's also a timeline. You can read about giants having children, and so that kind of defines it. The Bible's great about defining giants, and some have 6 fingers and 6 toes. This red giant of Kandahar does indeed have, it was said to have had 6 fingers and 6 toes. So let's get ready. I'm going to key up a little blurb here, go through this, and we're going to come by, we're going to do some analysis and some intelligence gathering on the cheap, and we'll be back in a little bit. Take care, Lord bless, and hear you in a bit. L.A. Marzulli gets ready to interview one of the shooters.
The reason I bring this up is because when I showed this lance to the shooter, he commented that this artifact was similar to what the giant of Kandahar was wielding. There is another dynamic I want to discuss before we run the clip from Watchers 10 DNA, which, by the way, has become viral. The fact that this giant had 6 fingers and 6 toes, as well as flaming red hair. There was also a stench that was as powerful as a skunk, but according to the shooter, smelled more like a pile of rotting corpses. Here's the clip, and you can decide for yourself if giants are alive and well and living in the present day. You were in Afghanistan in 2002, and you were called into a very remote section of Afghanistan because a patrol had basically gone missing.
Exactly.
Okay, there's no villages around for miles. So it's very remote.
Yeah, very remote. So we flew in about 4 kilometers. We're hiking through the same area where they were supposed to make one of their checkpoints, one of their rally points. And before we left, there was all kinds of what happened with the ambush. But that was even odd because at the point of the ambush, we called from any close air support, something. Okay, there was no calls made, just off the bridge. So we're coming down a mountainside, and there was a nice path, hill path. As we bent around this corner, you could see this opening of the cave. There's a cave. So we're coming around, and then I see there's a lot of rocks, which is another oddity, and then bone matter. I'm not close enough to identify what kind of bones, but I did see something I knew was a piece of our communications equipment. So instantly, we're thinking ambush, maybe animal, could be anything. There was enough room in front of this cave, but it had a sheer drop-off. But there was enough room that we actually got into a decent dispersal in case of ambush.
You see something coming out of the cave, and it's moving with a speed and agility that catches you off guard. Everybody.
And he comes out. There was a man at least 12 to 15 feet in height. constant red beard, then his hair was longish past the shoulder, a scarlet red, and Dan runs that and starts to broke all of us into the reality. Because it was so real.
Now your training is kicking in.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
muscle memory. That complete muscle memory. While Dan is moving at him, another bro of mine's laying down fire and I start firing. It's yours, Dave. He's now got him on this pipe. It went through. He's still got him. He's coming after more. We all just clicked in. I don't know what it was, but I remember we're all like, shoot him in the face, shoot him in the face. Our weapons components were M4s, we had 308s, and we had Barrett 50s. This is sounding longer than it took. We're talking 30 seconds. And he's taking multiple hits, and is still moving.
He talked about this giant being 1,100 pounds, anywhere from 10 to 15 feet long, and it was killed. It was apparently shot somewhere in a cave in Afghanistan, but before it was shot, it lunged at several of our troops, our soldiers. It may have even gorged somebody. It was just a bizarre story, and it just sounds like the Nephilim from the Bible.
Anything of it, and come to find out that the person that they killed actually was 3 times the size of a man, had extra digits on their hand and digits on their feet, and had red hair, and a special unit had come in and wanted this target.
When I arrived at the venue where I was speaking, I phoned Richard and I told him we had yet another witness to the giant story. The initial story that was told to us was related verbatim by this man as fact. We then interviewed both of these men for our film, Watchers 10 DNA. There was also a dynamic of the story that I want to point out to you, and it's this. A while back, I interviewed Chief Joseph Riverwind right here on PPS Report. The Chief and I spoke about what I have come to call the Nephilim Lance. This artifact was discovered in the backwoods of Michigan by an outdoorsman named Bob Shelley. Bob gave the original lance to the Chief, and I'm holding a reproduction of it, a 1-to-1 reproduction of it, here as I speak. This weighs about 8.5 pounds. It's very heavy, and when you take this and lash it to a pole, it would be very difficult for a 6-foot man to wield. And yet, this is...
Let me just show a brief Bible passage concerning that spear they're showing you here. The Bible talks about right down to the weight of the shekel and the iron composition of the lance that was used by Goliath and the giants. It's very important. Let's go ahead and get back to this presentation.
Rather than be somewhat peaceful, but I guess that comes with the territory.
Dan was dead. Okay. And Wyatt is a good man. He's probably one of the best men I know, now dead. Before I'd left, they were already starting what they call a 9-line, which is a medevac request. They're sending out a medevac request, then all of a sudden it's not a medevac request. All of a sudden we had a helicopter show up because, like I told you, it was a large precipice and a sheer drop. So the helicopter just came up from the drop. They had dropped netting, which is like cargo netting. It's like squares, and we were told we had to bundle him up. And we get another bigger helicopter, but it's almost like a Jolly Green Giant used to look back in the day that could get, through this area. Because the mountains, you gotta remember, Chinooks could only go in certain places because they had enough lift. And so we got him on there. The thing was too big, we couldn't move it. It smelled worse than a skunk. A corpse that's been around for a while.
really foul.
Oh, it was like a combination because of the, how do you put that, the persistence of a skunk smell. But once the helicopter came in, dropped its little hook, and off he goes. The communication was sent out, and we had a very large, possible human creature.
There you are in the hills of Afghanistan. How many troop members are you with?
We had 6 on my crew. When we say hills of Afghanistan, for us, we did not fly into the wilderness. We actually flew into a base. I guess this thing was transloaded out of the mountains by a CH-47. What I could see that it did have the 6 fingers I remember taking my foot up and placing it up next to its foot, and it was extremely large. We estimated at about 12 feet, give or take. What I can tell you is the weight of the thing, basically, it was approximately 1,500 pounds when it was getting on the aircraft. Now, if you take away the pallet weight and all the rigging that we had to hold this thing down, we figured it was around 1,100 pounds.
Of course we're upset. That's a given. Okay. We lost a very good guy. But add to that, you're discussing something that even in our after-action report, they're saying rewrite it. And we had to rewrite it the way they wanted.
How many fingers?
Six toes.
Six toes.
And the nails were weird because if you see somebody that ever has, I don't know what it's called, but it's
Like a fungus on
their nails, how they get pointy and they're like gnarly. That's what they look like.
As we showed you in the clip, the radio operator checked in and gave the report, and the unit was told to stand by as Central Command was about to dispatch 2 helicopters to them. They were told that the Giant would be loaded on one of the choppers, and then they would follow in the other chopper for debriefing. The shooter told us that when the chopper landed, they loaded the Giant into a very large cargo net. The first chopper towing the Giant left, and then they boarded the second helicopter and followed. When they returned to their base at the Kandahar province in Afghanistan, they were debriefed and told to keep all of this under wraps. They were forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which essentially would prohibit them from talking about this to anyone. It is with great reluctance on the shooter's part that he has come forward. He believes that people have the right to know what is going on this planet, that the supernatural is real, and that the startling and unsettling fact that a remnant of a legendary Nephilim are still on the earth may be. I mean, if there are 15-footers or 18-footers roaming the planet, and our military has brought them down, I mean, we have a right as American citizens. I mean, this isn't classified military stuff. This is something that we need to know, and it points back to the biblical prophetic narrative. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, here's my personal opinion. My personal opinion is if it points that the Bible's accurate, they don't want it. If it goes against Darwinian evolution, it's not to be spoken of.
So you're out in the boonies running around looking for high-value targets?
Correct. Okay. And we're doing those operations, and as we're getting into firefights, we're getting into different scrimmages, you want to put it that way, we would come back to the base, and we started hearing this rumor about a unit that killed what they started calling this really tall person. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Then come to find out that the person that they killed actually was 3 times the size of a man, had extra digits on their hand and digits on their feet, and had red hair. And a special unit had come in and wanted this target. What we'd heard that they had killed this thing inside a cave, or the mouth of a cave, and it was common knowledge among the military to hear this.
Now, when you say common knowledge, what do you mean? I mean, how does that work?
Years later, come to find out, when I had returned from Afghanistan and had met other military members that had not been there in the operations with me, if you would bring up the Giant of Kandahar, they knew about it. When you first hear it, you're thinking like, this has got to be a joke. This has got to be a hoax. But then after things go down a certain way and you keep hearing it, you start to realize it's not a joke.
Okay, just before we start gathering intelligence here on the cheap, look right here. You can see that people will get into Harry Potter, but the Bible talks about these spirits kind of coming up out of the ground in the end times and things happening. Well, anyway, we're going to go to Korea real fast and see how we can gather from leakers little bits, little bubbles of intelligence to the news media and apply that to when the truth really does wash out. And kind of by working in reverse, we can try to analyze this giant story. Well, here it is. How do you start a war in Korea? Well, first of all, you have no plan. There's no national compelling interest. There's no exit strategy. People say it's going to be a bloodbath. You'll end up getting people killed needlessly. All you'll do is rip the nation in half and cut and run. So how do you pull something like this off? This is how we're going to study the Kandahar Giants. First of all, you get a pretty boy like this saying it's a compelling interest. I guarantee we're going to take care of our soldiers. There's going to be in and out. It's not going to be much of a deal. And we're not going to tear the country in half and just make the equivalent of Cheney and Halliburton rich back in those days. How do you do it? First thing you do, you get helicopters, you make some major strikes, then you release photographs like this of atrocities on our side, then you let that stew, you release photographics of atrocities on their side of this guy getting his head chopped off, you mismanage it, you bungle it so bad it's screwed up, you tear the nation in half, and you leave them. We're pretty good at that in the United States and Canada. Now, how are we going to use this information? Well, what stopped the Korean War was leakers saying the guys aren't even dressed for winter. They're actually freezing to death. Some are inhaling gasoline, trying to stay alive. The war is being mismanaged. We have no compelling interest. And finally, well, let's take another look here. Vietnam, they said, don't go to Vietnam. You'll do the same thing. You'll go over, you'll rip the nation in half. They swore, no, we won't. It'll be a bloodbath. No, you're going to make people rich. What do? Repeat after me. You get a couple of pretty boys like this here. You get the helicopters up. You have helicopter strikes on the civilians. And what do? Right. You release some photographs of atrocities on both sides. And then you start crying crocodile tears. I don't know how this happened. And then you release a phony mission statement. Look at this horse's ass mission statement, if you will, right here, that caused untold, hundreds of thousands of people to be dead and sprayed with Agent Orange. Read this thing for yourself. And of course, they're not going to do anything wrong. No one ever gets in trouble. But what stopped this war? Leakers leaking things about not just atrocity, but what was going on. We're going to use the same techniques on the Kandahar Giant in Afghanistan and try to flesh out, hopefully, some little bubbles of truth in just a moment. Let's have another example, shall we? We come along with another example? Oh, let's try Guatemala. They took a bunch of kids and shot them up with syphilis and gonorrhea and diseases. Hundreds of them died, withheld medical attention, did the most ghoulish experiments. Here you can see finally leakers talked about it. Hillary Clinton had to go down and apologize to him. You probably don't remember this because, you don't follow leakers. Or maybe it's just hard for you to understand what's been going on. These guys, by the way, were not disbanded. This stuff is still going on. And you might do well to kind of remember that. Again, here's how it leaked out. Look at these hellacious experiments here they did to people. They say 89 was like 200 people, I've heard. So if you listen to leakers, about 90% of the stuff is no good. It's tinfoil hat crowd stuff, which you have to wade through. And some of it is absolutely correct. So here's some examples right here. We can use this. Now, down here on the bottom in a little bit, we're going to go to the Kandahar Giant situation and try to apply this same thing. Now, wait a minute. Let's do another example. Let's do this one together. How you do in a war? You get a pretty boy face like this. You swear there's weapons of mass destruction. You swear you won't tear the nation up and you won't make the Halliburtons and the Dick Cheneys rich. What do? Well, you lie, and here's what happens. There were never any weapons of mass destruction, and you release some photographs like this, the Abu Ghraib stuff. Everybody gets rich. In this one, it was a little bit different. It was managed a little bit better from the standpoint of treachery. And then, of course, Iraq now is torn up worse than North or South Korea. There's 3 ripped jobs on it. How did this stop after all these years? By people leaking photographs, leaking information, and complicities and things like that. So we're going to use these same techniques that cost us nothing and try to wade through. Let's go to one. I'll tell you what. Let's go to the CERN Hadron Collider. That's tied in with this giant a little bit. Let's make this 2 for 1. This Hadron Collider, people have been doing occultic experiments there, have been leaking out, doing ritual sacrifices there. Just pretend, of course. And it's out there. Google it if you like. What I'd like to do is to just show you a couple photographs of this, and then again, leakers. See this jackass? He was paid to do this ritual at CERN, the Hadron Collider, try and discover the God particle. The thing on the left is a man wrapped in plastic. He's pretending like he's suffering. They've got naked bodies. One of these jackasses doesn't even have his pants on. He's just got a jacket on when he does the dance, which unfortunately I'm going to play. Here's the death goddess they have in front of the CERN. And so all this information you don't hear about unless it leaks out. And let's go ahead. I'm going to let you look at this now and come back after you actually this is the 666 logo interpretation. Let's look at this thing in just a moment, and I'll play just a few seconds of the ritual, and then we'll come back and get back to learning about these little nuggets of information, winnowing through them. And I'm still not decided on the red-headed Kandahar Giant, but we're going to have some. In fact, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and have somebody else come in and talk to us a little bit. and then we'll do the ritual. Maybe that might be easier. Here's just some photographs of the stuff they've got going on at CERN, heavily involved in mythologies, heavily involved in getting people's heads thinking a different way about the rituals and making CERN, and it says right here, mythology and fallen angels and the occult. Unfortunately, that's been going on. Now, I think, yeah, here it is right here. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on here, just play this thing and let you decide for yourself if you're happy with this ritual. Okay, now we're going to go to a guy named Tim Alberino for some analysis. Then we're going to come back and do our own checking again.
And this leads me full circle to what I believe to be the supreme hidden purpose of the Large Hadron Collider and CERN. Recall that the Celtic deity Cernunnos, the horned lord of the underworld, represents the cycle of death and rebirth, of destruction and restoration. I believe that the Luciferian priesthood behind the thrones of the European Union and the United Nations intend to use CERN as the key to literally open the gates of hell in order to release the gods that have been imprisoned there, those fallen watchers and arcane entities bound with chains in the abyss of Tartarus. Their prime objective is the restoration of the Golden Age, when the gods mingled themselves with the seed of men, and their hybrid offspring ruled the earth. All of our research points inexorably to this grand conspiracy. It is my contention that the earth is even now being slowly terraformed via chemtrailing, HARP, and other such clandestine programs in order to reconstitute the conditions that existed on the planet before the flood of Noah, in anticipation of the hybrid race that is coming.
Okay, there's some pretty information. Here's a scripture about indeed angels being put away for a certain time. Anyway, back to the Kandahar Giant. From here on out, and of course the CERN Hadron Collider, as this information leaks out and you stumble upon Google or an occasional YouTube in the future, start noting all the things they're talking about, all the leakers talking about things, the ex-soldiers who were over there, or people saw some intelligence or who were asked to rewrite a report, and you can little by little they say the truth has a certain ring to it. Now, something else that has a certain ring to it that you really need to do if you're going to do this kind of work is you need to read the Bible cover to cover. I would suggest just like a book. You get an old King James Bible is the best one. If you say, I don't want a King James, and get a Webster Bible. A real hard one to read is the Geneva, but whatever. Start with King James. Read it cover to cover. Understand a little bit about God's Word, about these giants, about some of the stuff coming up in the future. Don't go to Harry Potter, for God's sakes. Go to what the Bible talks about, spirits coming out of the ground and people talking to other spirits and giants and spell casting and all this stuff. Find out what God approves of and what he doesn't, and give yourself a chance to at least look at the other side of the issue, if nothing else. At least look at it, so when you see these things, these Kandahar Giant things and other things in the future, you can have a biblical perspective. Feel free to get a piece of software. The stuff is free. We use it. We showed you how to use it. It's called Takarta. And do your research and have a great time with it. And don't forget that born-again experience. That's the key. Receiving Jesus Christ, what he did on that shed cross, and believing in it. And that pretty much gets you saved. Not a lot of rituals. Don't have to give any money. Think of the thief on the cross. Jesus, remember me in paradise. I believe you. Okay, it's done. You're going to make it. Same thing can happen for you. Well, anyway, take care. Lord bless. It's always a pleasure having you stop by here. Now, this was a wild one. I didn't have a chance to go really, really deep on intelligence gathering, but I've showed you how to take bits and pieces of leakers and also what the narrative is of whatever political group is under control at that time, meld the two together and flesh out some nuggets of truth. Peace to you, God bless you, and bye for now.